Welcome back to another SEO Fundamentals for Writers training course from StoryChief. By now you know me, Liam Carnahan, your SEO and content marketing coach from inkwellcontent.com. If you've watched all of the videos in this series so far, then you already have an understanding of some of the most important elements of SEO. But there are still a few more things you can do to really optimize your content and make it show up in more search results and bring more traffic to your website. And I'm going to go over those last few optimization tactics in this video. We're going to cover 4 important final SEO factors. First, we're going to talk about metadata, including meta descriptions. Then we're going to talk about content diversity and why it's so important. We'll discuss content freshness and the frequency of how often you should be posting content. And finally, we'll discuss how mobile content fits into the big picture. We'll start with metadata, which is an umbrella term for some of the extra things writers can add to their content to make it perform well for SEO. The page titles, which we covered in the last video, are a very important part of metadata. But another important element is what's known as the meta description. This text appears just below the page title in a search results page. You have complete control over what appears here. It's something that you can write and then upload when you're uploading your content piece. Your meta description is almost like a mini advertisement for the piece of content you're writing. You should give a brief summary of what users will find on the page and a reason why they should click on your result over all the other ones they could pick. For StoryChief users, you can create your meta description on the summary page down in the SEO story settings. If you're using a tool like WordPress to upload your content, consider downloading the Yoast plugin, which makes updating meta descriptions and other metadata for SEO a lot easier through WordPress. But keep in mind, when you're writing your meta descriptions, you don't have a lot of space to work with. So try to keep it down to between 100 and 150 characters, including spaces. Otherwise, it's going to get cut off, which doesn't look great in search results. And once again, StoryChief is here to help you make sure that your meta description is just the right length. The phrase content diversity refers to the different types of content that you might create on your website. And having a lot of different types of content and a lot of content diversity is good for both your SEO and your overall marketing strategy. It's true that long-form text posts do typically perform best when it comes to SEO. In fact, studies find that most of the content that ranks on the first page is about 1,400 words. That's pretty long. That's why in-depth blogs and list-based articles and guides and reports all do so well when it comes to SEO. But note that you can still apply optimization tactics to landing pages that are shorter and don't have that much text. You can still integrate those keywords into the subheaders and update that meta description. But beyond written text, you can do things like create video and audio, graphic design, imagery, interactive content, and more. This will help you connect with wider audiences who like different types of content, and it will give you more assets to use for your social media and other forms of marketing. Whenever you're uploading an image or a graphic, there's some important metadata that you should fill in as well, known as the alt tag. This is primarily for accessibility purposes. When you write an alt tag, you describe the image so that users who may not be able to see the image for one reason or another can understand what's going on. But Google also uses these alt tags to understand exactly what image you're putting on a page. Here's an example of how I might write an alt tag for this image. StoryChief users can easily update the alt tag right on the image they've uploaded into their story just by clicking on the little eye icon here. You can also add alt tags to your videos that you're embedding in your content or GIFs, and even if you're adding audio like a podcast or something like that. Speaking of which, if you do add audio, consider adding a transcript or turning a podcast into a blog so that Google has something to read to understand the content that you're creating. We also need to discuss the importance of content frequency and content freshness. Google's algorithm adores content that is fresh. It will always favor content that has a recent date on it over those that are older. It also prefers websites that post fresh content on a pretty regular basis, and it does not like websites that go for long periods of time without updating and putting up fresh content. For this reason, it's important that you are regularly updating your site with fresh content a few times a month at least. This is one of the reasons blogs are so valuable to people who are using SEO as a marketing strategy. When you have a blog, it gives you a place to upload lots of fresh content without clogging up the rest of your site structure. Whenever you post a piece of content for SEO purposes, make sure that you include the date when you upload it. This allows Google to know just how fresh that piece of content is. Over time, all content will suffer from what's known as content decay. This basically means that slowly your content piece will lose SEO power as other content pieces come and try to compete with you for the top 10 spots. To overcome this, it's a good idea to update your best SEO content pieces with more information over time, especially if you see it's starting to lose traffic. I'll show you how to monitor traffic to your SEO content in the next video. When you're refreshing a new piece of content, you need to add a lot of new information to it before you can upload it with a new date. Aim for around 30 to 50% fresh or completely new content. For example, if you want to update a list article that has 10 items on the list right now, consider adding 4 or 5 more items to that list, and then you've updated the word count enough to justify changing the date. You might also add time-relevant updates or a new perspective from your business or just deeper information. You can also add graphics or videos to make the content feel fresher and newer. When you're done refreshing the piece of content and you've changed enough of it, you can re-upload it with a new date and Google will probably start to send more traffic back to that piece of content. And a really important tip, when you do this, don't change the URL. This will make Google think it's a brand new page and you'll lose all of the valuable traffic you've built up from the first URL. Finally, keep in mind that an enormous amount of traffic coming to your website will be coming from mobile devices or tablets. In fact, by the end of 2021, the mobile share of organic search engine visits in the US was over 60%, so that's more than half. This means that if your website isn't optimized for mobile users, you're going to run into some problems with your SEO. Google's bots may well be looking at the mobile version of your website, so it's important that your mobile site looks good, is fully functional, and optimized with all of the SEO tips that I put into this article as well. In other words, don't neglect the mobile version of your site if you really want to succeed with SEO. Okay, those are some of my final tips for optimizing your SEO content. There are 2 parts to your homework for this video. First, I recommend heading over to my website, inkwellcontent.com, and visiting my resources page where I have a handy SEO writing checklist. I put this free download together to help SEO writers like you make it really easy to optimize whatever content piece you're working on. After that, take a look at the meta descriptions for some of the important pages on your website. You can use this handy Chrome plugin like SEO Meta in one click, or just look in the back end of your website, or if you're already working in StoryChief, go there and look at the SEO summary page. If you see empty meta descriptions or those that aren't optimized for search, try your hand at rewriting them so they're a little bit more exciting and enticing and that they fit. When you're done, we'll move on to the next session of this training, which is all about measuring and monitoring your SEO success.